The Galactic Assembly representatives shuffled nervously in their seats as Ambassador Krilltox of the Vexery Dominion delivered his report. The massive chamber, carved from a hollowed-out asteroid at the edge of the Orion Spur, had never felt so tense, so suffocating, so dangerous. And so, Krilltox concluded, his 6 appendages trembling slightly despite his best efforts to appear composed, "We have issued the standard warnings. The humans have been informed that further expansion into the Proxima Centauri system will be met with immediate sanctions." Supreme Counselor Javek leaned forward, her translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns of concern. And their response? Krilltox cleared his throat, or what passed for a throat in a species. They laughed. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. All 417 species represented in the chamber understood the gravity of this reaction. Humans didn't just laugh when amused. They laughed when they were about to do something terrible. Define laughed, demanded Counselor Naztul of the Draconian Confederacy, his scales bristling with static electricity. The human ambassador, Ambassador Douglas. He listened to our ultimatum, smiled, showing all those horrifying teeth, and then produced that barking sound they make when they find something amusing. Then he said, and I quote, "That's cute. We will take that under advisement." Under advisement? Whispered Javek, her luminescence dimming with dread. The standard human diplomatic code for "Go float yourself in a supernova," supplied Krilltox grimly. Yes. At the back of the chamber, Observer Paxley shifted uncomfortably. The Arcturians were known for their neutrality, their measured responses, their ability to see multiple perspectives. But even Paxley felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The humans were breaking protocol. Again, "May I speak?" Paxley requested, his voice carrying across the chamber despite its softness. "The Assembly recognizes Observer Paxley," announced Javek. "We may be overreacting." Paxley began carefully. "Humans use humor as a defensive mechanism. Perhaps Ambassador Douglas was simply, they have mobilized their 5th Fleet," interrupted military advisor Zendar, striding into the chamber with typical Caraxian bluntness. The towering, 4-armed warrior slammed a data crystal onto the central console. Long-range sensors detected movement an hour ago. The dreadnought Consequence has left Earth orbit, along with 3 carrier groups. The Assembly erupted in panicked chatter. Supreme Counselor Javek banged her ceremonial staff against the floor, the sound reverberating through the chamber like a death knell. "Order. We will have order." Paxley watched the chaos with growing unease. He had spent decades studying humans, even lived among them for several Earth years as part of a cultural exchange program. They were unpredictable, yes. Violent, certainly. But they were also logical in their own twisted way. They didn't mobilize fleets without reason. "What exactly did we do?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the din, yet somehow. The chamber fell silent at his question. "Excuse me." Javek blinked her 3 eyes in confusion. "What did we do?" Paxley repeated, more firmly this time. "Humans don't snap without provocation. They bend, they flex, they adapt, sometimes for centuries. But when they break," he left the thought unfinished. Krilltox shifted uncomfortably. "We may have restricted their access to certain technologies." "Which technologies?" pressed Paxley. "The quantum fold generators," admitted Krilltox reluctantly. "We have been redirecting shipments intended for their colonies." Paxley felt his heart sink. For how long? 3 Earth years. The chamber fell so silent you could hear a Flusian membrane flutter. "You have been secretly blockading human colonies for 3 years." Paxley couldn't keep the shock from his voice. "How many have died?" "None," snapped Krilltox defensively. "Their backup systems are irritatingly efficient. But we have successfully slowed their expansion by 47%. "At what cost?" whispered Paxley, but no one seemed to hear him. Military advisor Zendar was already moving on. "We need to activate the defense grid. Scramble our fleets. The humans must be contained before." The chamber plunged into darkness. For exactly 3 seconds, there was nothing but the surprised gasps of hundreds of beings. Then, emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the assembly in an eerie red glow. "Status report," barked Javek. The technician's panicked voice came over the comm system. Unknown. All systems just failed simultaneously. Impossible snarlet zondar. This station has 17 redundant systems. 18, actually, came a new voice, human, casual, almost bored. You forgot to count the maintenance subroutines. Amateur mistake, really. A figure materialized in the center of the chamber. Not physically. This was a hologram, but one of such extraordinary fidelity that several representatives flinched back. The human woman appeared to be in her 5th decade, her dark hair streaked with silver, her face lined with experience rather than age. She wore a simple gray uniform with no insignia, no rank, no indication of her position. "Who are you?" demanded Javek. "How did you breach our security?" The woman smiled, that terrifying human expression that never quite reached their eyes. "Captain Tessa Blackburn, Human Diplomatic Corps, Special Projects Division. As for your security." She gestured vaguely around her. "What security?" Zenar lunged forward, passing through the hologram. "This is an act of war." "No, I'd be sorfendar Blackburn replied calmly. "Illegally blockading our colonies for 3 years. That was an act of war. This," she spread her hands, "this is just a conversation. Restore our systems immediately," demanded Javek. "I'm afraid I can't do that," said Blackburn, examining her fingernails in a gesture of exaggerated boredom. "You see, right now, 17 human operatives are downloading every single file from your databases. Every secret treaty, every backroom deal, every dirty little arrangement you have made at the expense of less powerful species." Paxley studied the human carefully. There was something in her demeanor, a coiled tension beneath the casual exterior. This wasn't just a show of force. This was personal. "You are bluffing," said Krilltox. "No species could infiltrate the Galactic Assembly undetected." Blackburn's smile widened. Now was positively predatory. "Tell me, Ambassador, how's your son? Still at that prestigious academy on Vexry Prime? The one with the beautiful gardens where you met with Zendar 3 months ago to discuss art-erecting medical supplies meant for the Bellerophon colony." Krilltox's appendages froze in mid-gesture. "Oh yes," continued Blackburn. "We know about that too. Interesting coincidence. That colony was suffering from a Rigelian fever outbreak. 27 human children died, while those supplies sat in your warehouses." The chamber erupted again, this time with accusations flying in all directions. Krilltox shrunk back as several representatives turned on him, demanding explanations. "Quiet," roared Javek, her bioluminescence flaring to painful brightness. When order was restored, she addressed the human hologram with cold formality. "State your demands, Captain Blackburn." "Demands? Oh no, Counselor. We are long past demands." Blackburn's casual tone had vanished, replaced by something hard and implacable. "We are here to inform you of what's going to happen next." She waved her hand, and the hologram expanded to show a tactical display of the Proxima Centauri system. "Our 5th Fleet will secure all shipping lanes to our colonies. Any vessel attempting to interrupt those lanes will be disabled. Any vessel firing on our ships will be destroyed." Another gesture, and the display shifted to show Earth. "Meanwhile, we have dispatched diplomatic envoys to every member species of this assembly. They are carrying comprehensive evidence of your corruption, your manipulation, your contempt for your own laws." Paxley felt a chill. "You are bypassing the assembly entirely. Give the observer a prize," Blackburn said with mock enthusiasm. "Yes, we are done playing by rules you never intended to follow yourselves. From now on, humanity deals with individual species, one-on-one. Those who have dealt fairly with us have nothing to fear. Those who haven't," she shrugged. "Let's just say we have been keeping score." "This is madness," cried Javek. "You will destabilize thousands of years of interstellar diplomacy." "Diplomacy?" Blackburn's voice was suddenly sharp enough to cut stone. "Was it diplomacy when you quarantined our first colony ship because our biological signatures were potentially disruptive? Was it diplomacy when you classified us as a young species and restricted our movement to 3 systems? Was it diplomacy when you sabotaged our terraforming efforts on Mars because you feared how quickly we were advancing?" She leaned forward, her holographic face huge and terrible in the red emergency lighting. You have been playing a game with loaded dice, and now you are shocked that we have decided to flip the table. The silence that followed was deafening. You can't just. Krilltox's voice trailed off weakly. Watch us, Blackburn replied. Paxley stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his apprehension. You must understand the chaos this will cause. The Galactic Assembly has maintained peace for millennia. Peace? Blackburn turned to him with something almost like respect. No, observe Paxley. What you have maintained is stagnation. Controlled decay. A system where the powerful stay powerful and everyone else learns to live with less. She straightened, addressing the entire chamber now. Humanity doesn't work that way. We don't accept artificial limitations. We don't respect boundaries that exist only to hold us back. And we certainly don't stand by while our children die because some bureaucrat decided our growth was inconvenient. You will regret this, Zendar growled. The combined might of the Assembly will do what? Exactly, interrupted Blackburn. Go to war with us? By all means try. But before you vote on that particularly suicidal course of action, you might want to check your home systems. Another wave of her hand, and hundreds of small displays appeared around the chamber, one for each representative. These are feed from your home worlds, explained Blackburn. As we speak, human diplomatic vessels are entering orbit around each one. They are broadcasting evidence of your corruption directly to your citizens. All of them, simultaneously. Gasps and cries of dismay filled the chamber as representatives saw the chaos unfolding on their homeworlds. Crowds gathering in public spaces. Security forces looking uncertain. Government buildings surrounded by protesters. You have weaponized information, whispered Javek, horrified. You are damn right we did, Blackburn replied without apology. For centuries, you have kept your citizens in the dark about your dealings with us, about how you have exploited less advanced species, about the true state of the galaxy. That ends today. She clasped her hands behind her back, the picture of military discipline now. The Galactic Assembly has 24 hours to acknowledge publicly all sanctions against humanity, rescind them, and open your databases to independent verification. If you fail to do so, we will release everything, every last dirty secret, every corrupt deal, every classified technology you have been hoarding. This is extortion, hissed Krilltox. No, Ambassador, Blackburn corrected him. This is consequences. You pushed us and pushed us, certain that we would keep playing by your rules even as you broke them behind our backs. Her expression hardened. But humans have a tipping point. And congratulations, you found it. The displays vanished, leaving only Blackburn's hologram in the center of the chamber. 24 hours, she repeated. Oh, and don't bother trying to restore your systems. We have locked them down. Consider it. Insurance against rash decisions. Paxley stepped forward, his scientific curiosity now fully engaged. How did you manage this? The technological gap wasn't nearly as wide as you all believed, Blackburn finished for him. We have had quantum entanglement communication for decades. We have been listening to your secure channels since our first contact. We know more about your technology than you do, because we had to reverse engineer it while you were busy setting up roadblocks. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each terrified representative in turn. You thought you were containing a threat. What you were actually doing was creating one. With that, her hologram began to fade. 24 hours, she said again. I suggest you use them wisely. As the hologram disappeared completely, the emergency lighting flickered and died, plunging the chamber back into darkness. 5 seconds later, the main systems came back online, but the damage was done. The representatives of the Galactic Assembly looked at each other with new eyes, filled with suspicion, fear, and the dawning realization that the galaxy as they knew it had changed forever. In the back of the chamber, Observer Paxley found himself smiling despite the gravity of the situation. He had warned them, after all. Humans don't snap without provocation, but when they do, the whole galaxy trembles. The next 23 hours and 17 minutes were the longest of Observer Paxley's considerable life. The Galactic Assembly had devolved into chaos. Accusations flew, alliances fractured, and centuries-old tensions bubbled to the surface with frightening speed. This is unprecedented, thundered Representative Gorn of the Taurian hegemony, his massive fists pounding against the conference table. How did they infiltrate our systems so completely? Supreme Counselor Javek looked haggard, her bioluminescence dimmed to barely a flicker. That's hardly the point now, is it? We have less than an hour before their ultimatum expires. Paxley watched from his observer's alcove as the emergency council session continued its spiral into panic. The assembly had split into three distinct factions: those demanding immediate military action against humanity, those frantically pushing for compliance with human demands, and a growing number who simply wanted to disassociate themselves from the assembly entirely. "We should strike now," insisted military advisor Zendar, his four arms gesticulating wildly. "Our combined fleets still outnumber theirs. We can crush these upstarts before—" "Before what?" interrupted Ambassador Vril of the Solarian Compact, her feathered crest flaring with agitation. "Before they release evidence of how you personally diverted medical supplies from the Perseus arm? My sources tell me 17 worlds are already demanding your extradition." Zendar's hand moved to his ceremonial blade. "Choose your next words carefully, Ambassador." "Enough." Javek's voice cracked like a whip. "This infighting is exactly what the humans want. We must present a unified response." Paxley couldn't contain himself any longer. "With respect, Counselor, a unified response would require unified interests, something the Assembly clearly lacks." All eyes turned to him. As an observer, he rarely spoke during council sessions, but protocol had become a distant memory in the past day. "Explain yourself," Javek demanded. Paxley stepped into the center of the chamber. "Look around you. For centuries, the Assembly has maintained the illusion of cooperation while pursuing individual agendas. Some of you genuinely believed in the greater good. Others," he glanced pointedly at Krilltox and Zendar, "others saw opportunity in the status quo." "This is outrageous," sputtered Krilltox. "The Vexery Dominion has always—" "Spare us," said Ambassador Vril. "Your warehouse manifests are already circulating on the Interstellar net. The medications you are directed could have saved thousands." Krilltox wilted under a gaze. "The humans didn't create this division," continued Paxley. "They merely exposed it. And now we face a species that has experienced our worst behaviors and learned from them." "What do you suggest?" asked Javek wearily. Before Paxley could answer, a junior aide burst into the chamber. "They are here. A human delegation has docked at the station." "What?" Javek rose from her seat. "We received no notification of—" "That's because we didn't ask permission," said a familiar voice from the entrance. Captain Tessa Blackburn strode into the chamber, flanked by four humans in similar gray uniforms. Unlike her hologram, the Real Blackburn moved with a predatory grace that made several representatives shrink back. Her dark eyes scanned the room, taking in the disarray with evident satisfaction. "Captain Blackburn," Javek acknowledged stiffly. "Your ultimatum specified 24 hours. You are early." "I got bored," Blackburn replied with a casual shrug. "Besides, it seemed like you could use some help. Your communications network is absolutely flooded with panicked messages." One of Blackburn's companions, a tall human with copper-colored skin, stepped forward. "I am Admiral James Russell, representing the United Earth government. I am authorized to negotiate terms." "Terms?" Zendar spat the word. "You invade our communications, threaten our governments, and now you speak of terms?" Russell regarded the Caraxian warrior with cool detachment. "Would you prefer we skip the negotiations and proceed directly to the consequences?" "Advisor Zendar, how did you even board this station?" demanded Krilltox. "Our docking protocols were written by the same people who designed your impenetrable communications network," finished Blackburn. "Really, Ambassador, at some point you might want to stop being surprised by our capabilities." Paxley studied the humans with fascination. Their confidence was absolute, not the bluster of those attempting to project strength, but the quiet certainty of those who held all the cards and knew it. Javek sighed deeply. "What do you want, Admiral Russell?" "Reform," Russell replied simply. "The Galactic Assembly will acknowledge all past restrictions placed upon humanity, publicly rescind them, and open all records for verification." "That much we already knew," said Javek. "What else?" "A new charter," continued Russell. "One that guarantees equal representation for all spacefaring species, regardless of how long they have been among the stars. One that prohibits technological hoarding and secret sanctions." one with real enforcement mechanisms against corruption. You want to rewrite 4,000 years of galactic law. Krilltox's voice rose in disbelief. No, corrected Russell. We want you to actually follow the principles you claim to uphold. Freedom, fairness, progress. Your own charter speaks of these ideals. You had just spent millennia finding ways around them. And if we refuse, asked Zendar, his hand still resting on his blade, that Russell's expression didn't change. Then humanity will withdraw from the assembly permanently. We will form our own alliances with like-minded species, and we will publish everything, every document, every recording, every piece of evidence showing how the assembly has manipulated galactic development for its own benefit. You would fracture interstellar society, said Javek, horror evident in her voice. It's already fractured, countered Russell. We are just making it official. Paxley stepped forward again. Admiral Russell, Observer Paxley of the Arcturian Science Directorate. May I ask a question? Russell inclined his head. Of course, Observer. You have demonstrated overwhelming technological superiority. You could have forced these changes without warning, without negotiation. Why this approach? For the first time, Russell's composure slipped slightly. Something almost like regret crossed his features. Because despite everything, we still believe in diplomacy, in the possibility that different species can coexist without exploitation. We are angry, not vindictive. Captain Blackburn made a small noise that might have been a suppressed laugh. Russell shot her a quelling glance before continuing. More practically, Observer Paxley, we don't want to govern the galaxy. We don't even particularly want to police it. What we want is to remove the artificial constraints on our development and ensure no other young species faces what we did. How magnanimous, muttered Zendar sarcastically. Blackburn's eyes narrowed. Trust me, advisor, magnanimity was a minority position in our strategic planning sessions. You should thank whatever deities you worship that Admiral Russell's faction prevailed. What were the alternatives? Asked Paxley, genuinely curious. Let's just say, Blackburn replied with a predatory smile, that some of our military strategists favored making examples of certain assembly members, specifically those responsible for the Bellerophon blockade. Krilltox's appendages began to tremble visibly. Fortunately for everyone, interjected Russell smoothly, we believe reform is preferable to retribution. But our patience, while considerable, is not infinite. He produced a small device and placed it on the central conference table. A holographic display sprung to life, showing dense text. This is our proposed charter amendment. You have 1 hour to review it and begin the ratification process. If you choose to reject it, he shrugged. Well, Captain Blackburn's team is standing by with an alternative approach. 1 hour, exclaimed Javek. This document must be hundreds of pages long. It's 73 pages, corrected Russell. And yes, 1 hour. Consider it motivation to read quickly. As the council representatives huddled around the holographic document, Paxley approached Captain Blackburn, who had stepped away from the main group. May I speak with you, Captain? Blackburn regarded him with guarded interest. The famous Observer Paxley. Your papers on cross-species cultural integration were quite impressive. Paxley felt a flutter of surprise. You have read my work? Required reading at our diplomatic academy, she confirmed. You were one of the few who argued for treating humanity as equals from the beginning. For all the good it did, Paxley said ruefully, the Assembly rarely listens to scientific advisors when political expediency points elsewhere. And yet you stayed. I believed I could do more good from within the system than outside it. He paused. I'm no longer certain that's true. Blackburn studied him for a long moment. You know what fascinates me about your species, Observer? Your capacity for patience. Arcturians think in centuries, plan in millennia. So different from us. And yet, said Paxley quietly, when your patience finally ran out, you moved with a speed and decisiveness that has left the Assembly reeling. 3 years of watching our children die while medications sat in warehouses, Blackburn replied, her voice suddenly hard. 17 years of artificial restrictions on our colonial expansion. 49 years of being classified as potentially disruptive. At some point, even human patience reaches its limit. I understand, said Paxley. Better than most. What I don't understand is why you are revealing yourselves now. You clearly infiltrated our systems long ago. Why not continue gathering intelligence? Blackburn's expression softened slightly. You really don't know, do you? Know what? The Bellerophon colony was just the beginning. We intercepted plans for a more comprehensive blockade, one that would have affected all our outer colonies. Millions would have died, not just dozens. Paxley felt his exoskeleton grow cold. That's impossible. The Assembly would never authorize— Not the Assembly, Blackburn interrupted. A coalition of species led by the Vexery and the Caraxians. They have been planning it for years. The Assembly's corruption gave them cover. But why? What do they possibly gain? Fear, said Blackburn simply. Fear of what humanity might become if allowed to develop unchecked. And perhaps they were right to be afraid, just for the wrong reasons. She gestured toward the council, now engaged in heated debate over the document. They feared our technology, our expansion, our adaptability. What they should have feared was our memory. Humans don't forget being wronged, and we are very, very good at holding grudges. Across the chamber, Admiral Russell's voice cut through the cacophony. 45 minutes remaining, representatives. I suggest you focus on sections 3 through 7. Those contain the most significant changes. Paxley watched as Counselor Javek frantically tried to organize the review process, assigning different sections to different representatives. Will they accept it? He asked Blackburn. They don't have much choice, she replied. Even if they reject the charter amendments, the evidence is already spreading through the galaxy. The old Assembly is finished either way. And what comes after? Blackburn's expression turned thoughtful. That depends partly on you, Observer Paxley. Me. Humanity respects the Arcturians. Your scientific contributions, your ethical standards, they are admirable. In the new order, we will need mediators. Species with the patience to balance human impetuosity with the caution of older civilizations. Paxley felt a strange sensation, something like hope mixed with trepidation. You're offering me a role? I'm suggesting you have one already, Blackburn corrected. You just need to embrace it. Before Paxley could respond, a commotion erupted from the council table. Military advisor Zendar had drawn his ceremonial blade and was pointing it at Admiral Russell. This is preposterous, he bellowed. Section 5 would require full disclosure of military capabilities to all member species. I will die before agreeing to such terms. Russell didn't flinch, didn't even step back from the blade hovering centimeters from his throat. That would be unfortunate, Advisor Zendar, but it wouldn't change the outcome. You threaten me? A warrior of the Caraxian Imperium? Not at all, said Russell calmly. I'm simply pointing out that your death wouldn't alter the fundamental reality of your situation. Blackburn sait être que. And this is why I prefer direct action to diplomacy. She raised her voice. Advisor Zendar, before you make a career-limiting move, you might want to look up. All eyes in the chamber turned upward. The ceiling, previously opaque, had become transparent, revealing the star-filled void beyond. And in that void, silent and ominous, hung a massive human warship. The UES Consequence, Blackburn announced unnecessarily. Our newest dreadnought. Currently targeting this chamber specifically, the Admiral has been wearing a dead man's switch since we arrived. If his heart stops beating for any reason, she mimed an explosion with her hands. Zendar slowly lowered his blade. A wise decision, said Russell, as if the interruption had never occurred. Now, Counselor Javek, shall we continue with the review? Section 6 addresses technological sharing protocols. The remaining time passed in a blur of frantic negotiation and occasional outbursts. Paxley watched, fascinated, as the humans methodically dismantled 4 millennia of entrenched power structures. They didn't threaten or bully. They simply presented evidence, anticipated objections, and offered compromises that weren't really compromises at all. When the hour expired, Admiral Russell stood at the head of the table, flanked by his human colleagues, and facing the exhausted council representatives. Your decision, Counselor Javek. Javek looked even more diminished than before, her luminescence nearly extinguished. We accept the proposed amendments. In principle, the formal ratification process will take time. 3 days, interrupted Russell. Our ships will remain in position until then. 3 days, Javek agreed weakly. It will be done. A subtle tension seemed to leave Russell's shoulders. then our business here is concluded. Captain Blackburn's team will maintain oversight of your communications network to ensure transparency during the transition. As the humans prepare to depart, Paxley approached Russell. Admiral, a moment of your time? Russell paused. Observer Paxley, how can I help you? I wanted to express my admiration for your restraint today. Humanity had the power to impose far harsher terms. Russell smiled slightly. As I said, Observer, we are angry, not vindictive. And despite appearances, we genuinely hope for a more equitable galaxy. He glanced around the chamber. This was never about punishing the Assembly. It was about fixing it. For all species, asked Paxley, or primarily for humanity? A fair question, acknowledged Russell. I won't pretend our actions weren't self-interested, but we have seen enough of history to know that empires built on exploitation eventually collapse. We're playing a longer game. Paxley nodded slowly. Then perhaps there is hope for us yet. There's always hope, Observer. Russell extended his hand in the human gesture of farewell. Even at the moment patience snaps. As Paxley watched the humans depart, he couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. The galaxy had changed irrevocably. Power had shifted, alliances had fractured, and a new order was emerging from the chaos. But perhaps, just perhaps, it would be a better one. The humans had demonstrated both their capacity for righteous fury and their commitment to systemic reform. They had refused to accept the limitations placed upon them, yet they hadn't sought revenge when it was within their grasp. Across the chamber, Counselor Javek caught his eye, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and uncertainty. What happens now, Observer Paxley? She asked quietly. Paxley considered the question carefully. Now, Counselor, we adapt. We learn. We grow. He allowed himself a small smile. Much like the humans do. Outside the viewports, the massive human dreadnought shifted position, its engines flaring brilliantly against the darkness of space. Not retreating, not yet, but no longer directly threatening the station, either did a message Paxley realized. As eloquent as any diplomatic communique. The humans were watching, waiting, hoping for the best, but prepared for the worst, and no species in the galaxy would ever forget this day, the day humanity's patience finally snapped. But perhaps, in time, they would remember it not as an ending, but as a beginning. A new chapter in galactic history, written in the decisive hand of humanity ascendant.